As someone who used to cry very easily in situations like this because I was so pissed off, I know it's hard to get your emotions in check. Also, important, time passing does not equate to an apology. If you think that people pleasing shows that you have a big heart, you are wrong. Today, we're going to be diving into the uncomfortable truths about people pleasing and how they are connected to our childhood, the way that we were programmed to believe and think about ourselves in relationships, romantic partnerships, friendships, any connection that we have with people. People pleasing has a multitude of reasons, but I feel like at their core, one of them is an obsession with external validation from other people and the inability to see the value that we bring to any situation, or the ability to give ourselves credit or give ourselves permission to exist in the way that we want to. It also stems from a lack of self-trust, self-worth, your beliefs about who you are as a person. And when we don't have a solid foundation of who we are or why we exist in the world the way that we do, we can tend to attach our self-worth or what we believe about ourselves. We're looking for clues in our environment from other people. And depending on who you're people pleasing for or who you're attaching your self-worth to, if that person is toxic or narcissistic or they like to use people like you, what ends up happening is we're made to feel less than in every situation we interact with these people. We can feel drained. We can feel like our life is not going in the way that we want it to. We can feel stagnant energetically, emotionally, financially, physically. And because we are wired for connection, it is not abnormal to want to make your partner happy or your friends happy. But because we can sense energy, humans literally have that ability to feel what someone else is feeling, even if it's communicated non-verbally. If someone is sensing that you're going to contort yourself in order to make them happy, they will do everything in their power to make sure that you stay in that position. This is why sometimes when you notice that you're ready to stop people pleasing or you want to distance yourself from certain people, they don't want to allow you to separate from the relationship. And again, this is not gender specific. So you can have friends who are like this. You can have romantic partnerships like this, or you can have this same environment at your workplace. People pleasing has a few different tendrils, right? So you can have people who please you because they really genuinely care about you and they just want to see you happy. And I still say, even if you're one of those people, you're still giving up something of yourself in a relationship where we're talking about where it's not reciprocated, where it's not balanced, right? It's toxic. Or you can have people who people please as a form of manipulation and control. It's a way of having something over you. So I'm not talking about that. We're talking about people who are pleasing other people from a genuine place, from an honest, I love you and I care about you, but it's not benefiting you. It's not healthy for you to have that kind of attachment. And when you find that you're trying to do everything for your partner or your friends and you want them to like you, but you don't receive the things that you want, the respect or the love or the appreciation, even though you're doing everything for them, it could be because they're not able to reciprocate in that way. They don't want to reciprocate in that way, or they like the imbalance of your relationship. And one of the ugly truths about people pleasing is that people who do this, who give and give and give, they're left drained, and a lot of times they can be left with a lot of resentment because you keep doing for other people and then it's not reciprocated. You're not getting what you want from that relationship. It's not an equally balanced relationship. It's not an honest exchange. The antidote for this is self-care. It's connecting to yourself. It's self-love. It's knowing yourself. And it's not the face masks or the clothes or the physical things that you're doing. It's the deep inner work. It's the honest conversations that you're having with yourself on why you people please, why you think a relationship needs to have that at its core. Also, you can find that people who people please, who are honest with themselves, they actually don't think the other person should be people pleasing. They don't believe that the other person should have to sacrifice. They can get uncomfortable if someone is doing too much for them, but they're okay with giving of themselves. And as a recovered people pleaser, I understand what that feels like. I understand the mentality of it, and I also know the psychology behind it. So this is not to judge you, it's to understand ourselves with love so that we can shift, so we can decide who we want to be, and that healthier version of ourselves can show up more often, and we can check the people pleasing at the door before it starts. So if people pleasing is so detrimental to our mental health, our physical health, our financial health, our emotional health, why do we keep doing it? Why is it the default mode? Why is it so normal? A lot of this stuff stems from our childhood. We were programmed to believe this way. We were programmed to see this as normal. Your family dynamics, the way that your parents interacted with each other, the way your siblings interacted with you and your parents, that family dynamic, that initial introduction to social settings and social connections is what we deem as normal. This is why you find people who people please, but you also find people who want people pleasers, people who go out and they actually seek, they identify out loud that they want someone who provides for them. And again, this is not gender specific. Sometimes we're thinking it's only going to be women, but there are men who openly, honestly say they want a woman who pays for everything. They may not tell you that, but they are saying it to other people. And then they're trying to sort of manipulate and mold you into being that person who does the things that they desire. Sometimes we kind of glamorize, or we constantly talk about daddy issues, and then we ignore or dismiss the very real impacts that our mothers can have on our self-image, the way that we navigate relationships, the way that we believe in ourselves and what we believe women should be doing and how women should show up. One of the easiest ways to dissect how you view people-pleasing relationships, or why you show up in relationships the way that you do, is to think back on the advice that your mother or women in your life gave you. I know for myself, my mom gave me horrendous advice about men specifically, and acted as if the most toxic relationship I have ever been in, my mom was the one who told me that all men are like this, and my father was not like this. And so that's horrendous advice. I've talked to plenty of women who will say that their mothers are the reasons they believed they should show up in the way that they did. And again, this is not to like drudge up all of the traumas and the sadness in our life to sit there. It's so that we understand it. I know for me, knowing where something came from, knowing how my brain works, knowing what helps me navigate emotional spaces with more clarity, helps me be intentional about the way that I show up in the world. So you want to do the same thing, even if it's uncomfortable for you to have this conversation with yourself about why and where you got these ideas. It will allow you to mentally shift and have more clarity about why you're shifting. And women, we're like any other human. There is such a spectrum of growth in your teenage years, your young adult years, into your, as you get more grown. There's so many things that you're shifting in your life and in the way that you want to show up. But if you're not willing to unpack certain things, you'll carry them with you in every stage of your growth. And you'll always feel like something is kind of tethering you back to old scenarios, or you can't seem to shift this particular event in your life, or you always find men who are like this, or you're always seeking friends who are like this. And a lot of times, because of what our parents have deemed as normal, we go out and find and mirror the same things. And so a lot of stuff is running on autopilot, and being able to unpack what's in your subconscious mind will allow you to change the way that you think and the way that you accept certain behaviors and set certain boundaries with people. People-pleasing behaviors doesn't have to just be in romantic relationships. One of the relationships in which I was that person for my friend, this woman was someone who was constantly asking me for money and wanted me to show up for her in a way that really a partner should, or her parents should be. And I struggled in that relationship with, one, identifying that I'm being the person who's constantly trying to make her happy. I also failed to see the connection between her and my mother when I was younger. Now as an adult or more grown, I can see it. I struggled with telling her no. I struggled with identifying the manipulation real time. But one thing that really helped me shift in that relationship was focusing on how I felt when I talked to her, focusing on how I felt after I talked to her, focusing on the imbalance in the relationship. Like, it's confusing, and this is one of the hardest things about people pleasing, is that it really does come with this kind of fog, this mental fog of, why does this not feel good? In TV shows, the unhealthy relationships are so ridiculously obvious that we're all yelling at the TV trying to figure out why this person stays, or why they can't see them for who they are. But in real life, it's not that simple, and it's a lot more complex. The emotional entanglement, the conversations are less blatant, they're more subtle. So, for example, for myself, when I used to struggle with not picking up the phone from people, I had to start realizing that when they text me, I could say no. I felt safer saying no in the text message, because on the phone, they're trying to cry, they're trying to give me these sob stories, they're trying to change the inflection of their voice to sound more sad and pathetic. And so I just started saying, my boundary is that I'm not picking up the phone. My boundary is that if you have something of importance to tell me, you can text it to me. So you want to start shifting in ways that feel comfortable in your body. They don't have to be flat out, absolutely not from the very beginning, because realistically, that's going to be hard. To go from people pleasing to setting a boundary like that will be difficult. Now, some relationships aren't. And this is another thing that helped me. Strangers, I was really easy. Like, it was really easy for me to do that. Relationships in which men were like, I was like, absolutely not. That was easy for me. You want to start where it's easy and learn to trust yourself and be honest with yourself that you can see that you don't deserve it here, but you're missing the mark over here. And that friendship that I had, it ended because I realized that I'm giving more of myself more honestly to someone who is not willing to give to themselves, but more importantly, has always felt jealousy towards me. It was always competitive towards me. So the fabric of that relationship was not even honest or beautiful anyway. So I wasn't losing anything of value by disconnecting with this person. And more importantly, who I had to be when I was around them was a shrunken version of myself. This is also something that helps us shift out of people pleasing, is what kind of person are you in that relationship? Are you able to show up fully as yourself, or do you feel like you're not allowed to be the fullest honest version of yourself because they don't like the way that you show up? Like, I've said this before in other videos. My mom used to make me feel like I couldn't have my hair done, my nails done, my makeup, a nice outfit. It was almost like you had to pick one. You couldn't show up and be everything all at once. Now, I have said this in my Healing from Mother Wounds video. I don't have resentment towards my mother, but I'm honest with myself, because there's just things you can't unsee. Like, when you start to heal and you're honest with yourself on that healing journey, you can't go back. You can't undo what has been done. And as a mother myself, and I have 4 children, and one of my kids is in that kind of preteen, about to be a teenager this year, there are just things I would never in my life say to my daughter, period. One, my kids in general, but especially my daughters, because I know how fragile their self-image is, and what a mother and daughter relationship, how valuable that is, because there are studies about the impact that a mother has specifically on her daughters versus her sons, and what kind of woman or how that young lady navigates life based on their relationship with their mother. So there's just things that are inexcusable about what my mother did or said to me. But I understand. It's just, I've always said this for myself, is that you can have your opinion and you can live the way that you want to, and you can have the traumas that you have, but not on my time. There are some people where my mental health, my emotional health, my financial health is more important to me. And these are my boundaries. And again, the more you heal, the more you become more grounded and solid in who you are. You don't actually have to express your boundaries to people. You don't have to tell people what you think of them. You show it energetically, who you are. You exude that confidence, that alignment, and those people can feel it. let's say you're trying to disconnect from people pleasing with your mother. Let's say that it's a mother figure or someone in your family. This is also why I say being put together, like healing that part of yourself that wants to dress up, be more feminine. For some of us, it is not just like, oh, so stereotypical to want to be pretty. Like, oh, you just always want to put yourself together. For some of us, that's an act of rebellion. Putting yourself together, loving yourself is an act of rebellion because you were not encouraged to be that person. So if you're trying to disconnect from people pleasing or trying to earn more respect and be less polite in relationships with family, you can start small, like I did, where you're just not picking up the phone as much, or you are establishing, I'm not answering the phone from you people, I'm not texting back immediately. Like the toxicity that I experienced, having conversations with these people wasn't ever an option. If they did something and I didn't appreciate it, for example, my mom, I would say to her, I don't want to hear about these people. You keep talking to me about these specific individuals that you know I don't like, and I don't want to hear it, right? She would acknowledge that and not talk about them, but then talk about somebody else who would piss me off. So it's this kind of like constant dancing around. So it's not just this idea of sharing your boundary with somebody. Sometimes you have to say to yourself, I'm not even going to waste my own time. I'm not going to waste my time with this situation. So you really want to decide who is worth wasting your time. Every situation that you're in, you are expending energy. You are connecting with people. And energy is currency. And who do you want to give your energetic currency to? It has to be your choice. It cannot be that these people are deciding. This is where people pleasing, it shifts from having a normal connection with someone to now somebody disrespecting your boundaries because you're giving of yourself even when you don't want to. You are sharing your time with someone even when you don't want to. Okay, so this specific tip is for my younger women who are kind of like navigating their early 20s or your 20s in general. I mean, you can apply this at any point in your life, but specifically, if you are in a stage, even if you were older, but you had just gotten out of a relationship and now you're kind of like trying to find yourself again, this advice would work for you. Date yourself. You want to literally know yourself so well that anytime anyone comes along, and again, this is not gender specific and not specific to just relationships, romantic relationships, any kind of connection, you want to know yourself so well that you're not overextending or giving more of yourself in order to keep somebody around. You don't want to be in a place where you're stressed or psychologically not in your own body because you're just coming out of something traumatic or you're constantly on the go, that a person who comes into your life can determine what direction you go in and how you show up in the relationship with them. So dating yourself means literally going on dates. This is something I used to do when I was younger. And even now, like I don't mind going places by myself, but go to the park, go to a lunch date, go out for drinks by yourself. Like obviously don't drink and drive. Go to a cooking class, do, like a pottery making something, there's like running clubs. There's so many things that you can do, especially if you're trying to stretch outside of what is normal for your environment, for your culture, or for your age group, and your friends aren't really into this, but you might be. Explore new hobbies and interests that you have by yourself, even if other people aren't willing to go with you. Because again, we're developing self trust. We're learning to connect with ourselves, and we're taking all of that energy that we're giving to other people, that externalized energy, we're bringing it back within ourselves. So as much as like when you meet somebody, people pleasing causes us to be like, I want to know everything about you. I want to make you feel happy. I want to make sure that I show up in the way that makes you feel good. Now, that's not a bad thing, right? These are gifts. This is love that you give to people that really makes people feel seen. But when we're not conscious of how and when we should give that to people, we'll just be giving it out to the world to the random people that we meet at Starbucks or every single person that we meet at our job, instead of saying, it's precious. And I want to make sure that the people who see that honest side of me is people who love me and show up and show me the honest side of themselves. This is often really overlooked, but you can't have a healthy relationship with other people until you first have a healthy relationship with yourself. And sometimes people want to argue with this and say, well, I've given to other people even when I don't love myself. The truth is, how can you say that's healthy? How can you say that that's a good way of living where you're giving more of yourself to other people than you're willing to give to yourself? That still stems from a lack of love for yourself. If you don't think you're worthy of loving yourself the way that you love other people, that's not helping you. And this was, again, something I had to say to myself. This was an honest conversation I had to have with myself. If it's not helping me, it's harming me. So even though I love showing up for people in a way that's giving, 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 am I draining all of my energy in order to show up for somebody else in a way that they didn't even ask me to show up for them? This is another thing where it stems from our childhood, because if you have parents who what you did was never good enough, or how you showed up was never okay, your quirkiness, the whole personality that you displayed was shamed and just weird and not okay, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to reach for a bar that keeps moving upwards. It's never enough. So, can you see how that is at the base of a people pleasing relationship? Like the one in which it's toxic, the one in which you're giving too much of yourself, it's never enough. These people are constantly pushing the bar back. And unfortunately, when we're talking about friendships in which people pleasing is at its core, some of the most dangerous women that I have ever experienced were women who were not at peace within themselves, and they projected that onto other people and literally went out of their way to try to destroy my entire life. And these were not women I was directly connected to. These were not women that I was harming. These were not women that I was talking to or knew on any kind of level. So this is why I say, like, the relationship you have with yourself is going to be reflected in how you treat other people. And even if you are treating people better than you're treating yourself, that still is saying something about how you feel about yourself. And oftentimes women have this desire to fix men, to heal men, to make men feel better. I will say though, people pleasing is not gender specific. You can have men who do this as well, but I'm talking to women because this is my audience. But when women have this desire to fix men, not every man has to be someone that A, you fix, or B, you date. Like, you do not need to be that man's therapist in order for you to feel sorry for him or want better for him. You don't have to be someone who dates him. They can just be someone at a distance that you feel sorry for or give advice to when it is applicable. But to put yourself in a position of needing to be with a man and then being the one who fixes him and saves him, I have never seen that work out in which it benefits anybody. And the same thing, vice versa, where men want to be with a woman who they have to fix and save. I've never seen that work out where, especially if both people are not coming from a healthy place, I've never seen it work out where it was beneficial to both parties. We also want to keep in mind that a lot of these tactics, they can apply to healthy relationships, but there's a different set of tactics and tips that you want to apply to unhealthy relationships, right? In a healthy relationship in which you are people pleasing, that other person, when you decide to pull back on that, or you say to them, you know what, I realize I'm giving too much of myself and I need to spend time doing something for myself. Like, for example, we can people please when we're in families where we have children and you are programmed to believe you have to give to your kids. And then there's like a moment you're like, I need to do something for myself. Like this video, I am filming this at like 11 o'clock at night because this is the only time I had available. My kids are asleep. And my husband was like, yeah, we can, instead of having our normal evening of watching our program or whatever, like I think you should prioritize this. In a healthy relationship, your partner or your friend will be okay with you prioritizing yourself just as much as they would like to be prioritized. They will also be okay with you pouring all of that love and attention into yourself. Now, again, you should never be in a space where, you're asking permission, but you get what I'm saying. In an unhealthy relationship, that person literally wants to be the person who dictates how you show up for yourself and act as if they are in control of that. It's up to them to decide whether or not you have that. Also, in healthy relationships, these people have seen you at your most vulnerable, and it's safe for you to be that way. In unhealthy relationships, they may have seen you at your most vulnerable, but it's not safe for you to be that way. And they use that against you. This is why people pleasing or learning healthy dynamics and how to show up in healthy relationship is different from a toxic relationship, because the rules are different. There are no rules. They make up the rules on the fly. And it's constantly having you in this emotional roller coaster where you're up and down. This is why I'm saying there's so much confusion in a relationship like this, especially even friendships. It's not just romantic partnerships. What does that look like when you have an unhealthy people-pleasing relationship with a friend who is jealous of you? What it looked like for me was this person was never consistent. Like, if I wanted to hang out with them, they would make the plans and then drop the plans, disappear for a long time, and then kind of show up because they wanted to get information from me so that they could tell other people. Like, that's what that looked like. It was never consistent. In a healthy friendship, you are connecting with that person. It doesn't have to be all the time, but on a regular basis, whatever that means to you and that other person. You both respect each other's time and energy and the way that you show up. You are giving of yourself, and that person is giving of themselves. But there isn't a need to have your constant guard up because you're trying to protect yourself from this person. So, a quick example of someone who was like this was this individual who is connected to our family, and she is a serious, emotionally manipulative person. And I always felt like her goal was not to connect, her goal was to control. So when you think about dealing with someone who is like this, the tips that I would give you in handling a person who is more toxic at their core. The first thing is that you want to keep communication at a minimum. You do not want to be in long, drawn out conversations with someone who is toxic or narcissistic or very manipulative, emotionally blackmailing you at every turn. You also want to sound like a dang broken record. You want to keep repeating the same thing. Sometimes narcissistic people, toxic people, they love getting you in these like constant open loop dialogues where it feels like it never ends. And you make a point, like they'll say something and you will itemize everything that they say, you counteract it, and they pick one thing at the end and make a whole random tangent speech about it. You want to have the three things that you want to say in the relationship: no, no, and no, in that conversation. And you want to keep bringing it back to the fact that this is how you feel. You've said this multiple times. Again, keep it simple and short. I have told you what my boundaries are. That doesn't mean we go into a tangent of what our boundaries are. You just say, I have told you. I have expressed this to you already. I have reminded you already. And when they go off on a tangent, oh, well, you don't care about me and it makes me sad because what about this and what about... You go back. I have told you before why this is not. And again, conversations and communication with people that we don't need to have it with, we shouldn't be doing it. But let's say you have to. There's an absolute need to communicate with this person. Keep it simple. Also, do not try to see it from their perspective. Because if we're dealing with a narcissistic, toxic person, we already know their perspective is skewed. We already know that it is heavily emotionally charged, and the intent is not to connect with you. It's to control you. So trying to see it from their perspective and communicate that you can see it from their perspective is the first red flag to a bull. As soon as they see that you're willing to see it from their perspective, now all of a sudden the tears come out, or they're going to try and take you down this windy road of foolishness, and it's never ending crap. Also, try not to forgive so easily, okay? Forgiving is for ourselves. It's not necessarily for other people. You don't want to walk around with the heaviness and the burdens of being angry and resentful. However, that doesn't mean you have to sit down with these people and communicate to them that you forgive them. Because I have found that people like this, they want you to forgive, forget, and go right back like you have amnesia and do the same thing over again. They go immediately back into the same foolishness. This is why, again, when you're talking about healthy connections versus unhealthy ones, forgiveness for people like this is a pass to keep treating you the way that they do. You also want to view the things that they've done more objectively. You don't want to be so emotional about it. And this is again when you reflect on it on your own time for yourself. So if you're trying to process why this person said this to you, why they treated you this way, you have to take away the emotional element. So let's pretend this is a mom, okay? You don't want to be in the place of saying, well, I'm their daughter. Like, how could they treat me like this? They don't see you like that. That's something I learned very quickly. They do not see you as a child. They do not see you as, someone that they should be protecting and should be loving and should be guiding. They don't see you that way. So you want to see their behavior towards you without the title that's associated. If this is a husband or a wife or a romantic partnership, you don't want to think to yourself, well, I'm their partner and we've been together for so many years. Yeah, but if they were treating you like trash the entire time, for them, it's not a matter of like, oh, we've been together for so long. They're literally saying, well, we've been together for so long. You've been putting up with this for so long. Why is it a problem now? Also, important, time passing does not equate to an apology. A favorite of people like this is to let time pass and then to come back and see how you're feeling in about a week. And depending on, if you'll notice this, if the first time they do it, they'll come back immediately. And if you forgive them, it's like, oh yeah, she always forgives or he always forgives. If you keep going, it's like, oh, okay, the next time they need like a day or two, or they need a week or a month. And then eventually it's like, if you tell them no, but let's say they're connected to like a brother or a cousin or a friend, they'll go to that person and try and finesse their way back to you. We want to be so aware of the way that they try and use time, distance, or other people to get to us that we're no longer shocked or surprised when they show up to the family get together or this work event because they know you're going to be there. You want to say to yourself, I have processed this over and over again, and every single time I come back to the same thing is they treat people like trash. They treat people like objects. They treat people like they don't matter, and that's not how I treat them. That is not what I expect in a relationship, and I am not willing to accept it, period. The last thing when dealing with people like this is you want to be able to keep a level mind, a calm, cool mind. Because when we get too emotional, they use that against us. And I know that's hard. I know it's hard because as someone who used to cry very easily in situations like this because I was so pissed off, I know it's hard to get your emotions in check and like not let that get to the best of you. But this is why we want to have a calm, regulated nervous system. Because when someone does something like this, we are no longer activating fight or flight where we're like fearful and then we're emotional and then we're crying and we're panicking. We're actually calm and we're in our body. And then we can say, actually, I remember this. And a tip that I used to use for myself was that I stay calm. And I realized that I didn't have to say things the fastest. I didn't have to be the one who said it first. I can calm my mind down and get my thoughts in, and then clearly and calmly, without tears, without feeling sad, communicate that I still don't like you. Okay, so now we're going to get into some solutions and some practical tips on how to stop being so polite and demanding more respect and no longer being a people pleaser. So the first tip is that you want to believe in your own abilities. You want to see how you are capable because the thing that you're seeking in other people, you want to recognize it within yourself first. You want to build your self-trust to acknowledge how capable you are. So the way that we do this is simple things. We're keeping promises to ourselves. We're going out on these solo dates. We're building hobbies. We're following our passions and careers. We're doing things that help us recognize where we are able to take ourselves and our dreams the full distance. We are capable of giving ourselves the love that we're so desperately seeking in other people, the validation that we're seeking in other people. It's so much easier to stand up for yourself and to communicate your boundaries when you love yourself, when you know that you're capable of giving yourself things. You also don't feel so afraid. Like, another thing that these people like to do is threaten you with leaving. And sometimes that can come with like them taking resources. And that's not just financial. That could be love. That could be company. That could be time, the energy that you poured into this relationship. And the fear of that ending can keep a lot of us in situations we shouldn't be in. So again, if you know your own love comes from you, if you know that the way that you take up space in your own environment is so beautiful and so connected, if they leave, they're not taking anything with them, not anything of you. You might be sad because obviously that's natural and that's human, but you won't feel like your whole existence is tied up in that connection. And again, that's not just romantic, that's friendships as well. We've seen this before, right? Where, especially public friendship breakups, where a friend group was together, but let's pretend that person A is in this friend group and they bring in person B, but then the friendship breaks up and the person that they brought in is the one who takes the whole friend group. That can make us feel like, I don't want to break up this friend group because I'm going to lose all my friends. But if that friend group is not in alignment with who you are trying to be or what direction you're trying to go in, it's okay to have outgrown that friendship. It doesn't say anything negative about you or those other people. You don't want to be afraid of losing people. You want to be afraid of losing yourself. The next tip is to learn not to budge with your boundaries. If you are not okay with something and it's something that like seriously is you're not okay with, it triggers you emotionally, psychologically. It's something that really gets to you. Don't budge on it. Don't feel like you have to accommodate somebody else. Honestly, it can be small things. You not being okay with something because it reminds you of childhood traumas, that's okay for it to be a boundary. Don't budge on that. This is why we end up in friendships where, we're giving too much financially, or it's almost like we're a partner to these other people because we're giving too much of ourselves in these relationships. Same thing with romantic partnerships. If you know you have a boundary that you don't want to live with somebody before you guys get serious or get married or whatever it is, don't let somebody talk you into moving in with them because financially it would make more sense to stay with that person. These can be little things like your car. If you don't want to let your family drive your car, it's okay for you to say that's a boundary and I'm not budging on that. Don't let anybody make you feel like it's a bad thing to not do that. I had this before with family members who wanted to borrow my stuff, my clothes or items that I got, and they wanted to borrow them before I even used the item. And when I tried to say that the answer was no, they acted like I was such a terrible person and called me the B word because of it. I didn't care. Okay. And the reason I said no is because that person disrespected my stuff and would literally destroy my things and bring them back to me dirty or broken. You don't respect yourself and therefore you don't respect me or my things. So again, whatever your boundaries are, stand firm on them and know that your boundaries, like let's say you're in the healing process, so you have a boundary of like you're not going to date certain people or you're not going to talk to certain people or you don't go certain places because it triggers you. That is helping that version of you heal. As you heal, you might find that those boundaries, like, you don't need them anymore because you're not triggered by those same things. You have different boundaries. That's okay too. You want to be able to shift into those new spaces, knowing what you like or don't like, and being okay with giving yourself the permission to change and grow as life changes and grows with you. The next tip to being less polite and gaining more respect is to be more assertive. Being assertive doesn't mean you're going around bulldozing people with your ideas or what you desire, but it means saying things with confidence and knowing that what you're saying is of importance and of value and that people want to hear what you have to say. Even if they don't agree with you, knowing how to communicate those in a way that says that you like yourself and you like what you have to say, and you know that it's okay for you to take up space in this way, whatever that looks like for you. Being assertive doesn't mean you're robotic or that you're aggressive with people. It can mean like if you're a bubbly, happy, joyful person, you can still communicate it in the way that you want to, but knowing that you want to be intentional about the way that you say things to certain people. Also recognizing, reading the room. Like if you're in an environment where being bubbly and cutesy is not going to help you, don't show up like that because people won't take you seriously. But if you're with your friends, that's okay, right? But the more that you show up in a space in a way that is more in alignment with you, you build more confidence in yourself. And confidence is the byproduct of action. My girl Aisha said this, and I love her for it. The more we show up and do the things that we need to, the more that we take intentional steps, the more we feel confident in communicating that with other people. The next tip is to exude confidence and not necessarily in a verbal way. We want to use non-verbal communication, the way that we walk, the way we dress, the way we hold ourselves. These are things that are going to speak for you before you enter a room, when you enter a room, as you're passing a room. You want to take up space, consciously and unconsciously signaling to people that you are not afraid to be seen. One of my favorite things is to give other women compliments. I also love receiving compliments from women. Because I know that a confident woman is going to tell you that she likes the way that you look. She is not threatened by you. And that for me is such a sexy way of communicating your confidence. It makes you so much more attractive because you allow yourself to show that you're not threatened by another woman. You're not threatened by anybody else. So practice that. Practice giving compliments to people that you like the look of. Don't feel threatened by their presence because their presence is not dismissing of yours. It's not the absence of your beauty or your intelligence. And this helps reshape your mindset and what you believe is confidence, what you believe will communicate with other people what you think of yourself, how you think of yourself. And my last tip, which I feel like is not talked about enough, is to stop neglecting your anger. It may seem impolite to express your anger or show that you're angry, but it really isn't. It's a natural human emotion. And a lot of times when we're feeling disrespected or we're feeling neglected or we're feeling, especially when we're trying to counter people pleasing, giving yourself permission to feel the full spectrum of emotions is a way of connecting back with yourself and giving yourself permission to show up in the world and take up space in the way that you know you desire to. It's also a way of recognizing within yourself what you're not okay with, how people treat you or what people say to you that you're not okay with, and then learning to express that in a healthy way with someone, to express your boundary because it is driven by that part of you that was angered in the first place. So if you made it this far into the video, first of all, I love you. And secondly, I hope that you walk away with something from this video that adds to your life in a positive way. I hope you also realize that being less polite is not about being more inconsiderate or being less intentional about the way that you connect with people. It's about reclaiming your energy and connecting with yourself in a way that is honest and true for you. When we stand up for ourselves, when we're honest with ourselves, we'll notice a shift within us, but also people notice that shift. And people show up and interact with you differently because they know that you're thinking of yourself differently. You're showing up for yourself differently. It also means that setting boundaries becomes less daunting, and we realize that the world is not going to end because we set a boundary or we said no to somebody. And yes, you can lose people during this process. People who are not meant to be with you, people who are taking advantage of your time, or people who are just no longer in alignment with you. But that is okay because not everybody is meant to be in your life. There are some people who are meant to leave your life in order to make space for other people who are more in alignment with you. So the next step, your homework, if you will, is I challenge you to pick one area of your life where you feel like you are people pleasing, and practice saying no without guilt and without shame. And notice how people respond to you. Notice the way that they treat you and what they feel towards you. Take what you've learned today and start small. But more importantly, remember that respect does start from the inside. Give yourself the love that you desperately desire. And I will see you in the next video.